Healing Minds, Changing Attitudes is underwritten by the Arkansas Mental Health Research and Training Institute.
Hello and welcome to Healing Minds, Changing Attitudes. I'm your host, Pamela Smith. The holiday season can be a joyous occasion, but it can also bring about stress, anxiety, and depression, commonly referred to as the holiday blues. This program will take a look at how to recognize the signs and manage them. Joining me to speak on this very important topic are Dr. Nihit Kumar, child and adolescent and addiction psychiatrist at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences and president of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI Arkansas. Dr. Tiffany Haynes, a clinical psychologist and assistant professor for the College of Public Health at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Joyce Wesley, a licensed clinical social worker and director of psychological health for the Arkansas Army National Guard. And last but certainly not least, Ruth Trowbridge, NAMI Connection Recovery Support Group facilitator and state trainer. Thank you all very much for joining us to talk about what is obviously a very timely and important topic. We're going to visit with you first, Dr. Kumar. Talk about the signs or symptoms of depression.
Right. So depression, or major depression as we call it, includes symptoms like feelings of worthlessness, guilt, feeling down, irritable, tired, having low energy, concentration, appetite changes, feelings of guilt, and sometimes even suicidal thoughts. And it's important to recognize that depression is not just feeling sad 1 or 2 days, but it's just being in that state of despair for at least 2 or more weeks. Mm-hmm. And then there's a subtype of depression that we see during the holiday season, as we call it, which is called seasonal affective disorder, which has some of the same symptoms, but it comes on usually during the fall season and then remits during the winter, after winter or early spring. And so it only occurs during this seasonal pattern. Mm-hmm. So that's what depression and seasonal affective depression is, and the differences between those two are.
And the distinction. Well, now we're talking about depression and then seasonal affect disorder and the holiday blues. Dr. Haynes, what's the distinction there?
So holiday blues is really a common name that we use for that subclinical level of symptoms. So when he was talking about appetite changes and sadness, you may be experiencing that during holiday blues, but it's not yet at the level of what we would say is depression. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to determine that, but a lot of times it's the duration. So like you said, if it's 1 or 2 days and it's not nearly every day for 2 weeks, then it may be more of a holiday blues issue. And actually the severity. If you're still able to continue to do the functioning at the same level that you were, but you're just feeling an increased use of feeling of sadness, then that may be more likely to be that subclinical holiday blues rather than the clinical diagnosis of depression.
So what's the distinction in terms of, when you have something that can be kind of general and feeling down and sad? I mean, where do you draw the line to determine whether or not it's just the holiday blues or if it's depression?
Right, it can be hard to tease those two apart because the symptoms are very similar. With depression, it's a clinical diagnosis, so you can't, usually you can't go online and diagnose yourself. You can certainly have some of those symptoms, but it's important to see a mental health provider to make sure that you meet criteria for a major depressive disorder or even a seasonal affective disorder. So for someone who's not a clinician, the easy way to explain this is the intensity and the duration of symptoms. Mm-hmm. If the intensity of symptoms are low, as Tiffany said, and the duration is lower, it doesn't meet the criteria for a major depressive disorder. And so less symptoms for just a few days, maybe not more than 2 weeks, is the big distinction.
Mm-hmm. So who's impacted by holiday blues typically?
You know, anybody can really be impacted by holiday blues, but we see it a lot of times in individuals who have lost someone, a family member, who are not able to be with their social group, because holidays typically we think of being with family and friends. And so if you've had a loss where you're not able to connect with those family and friends, you may experience holiday blues. Other people who have had some type of event that typically happened, an anniversary of some type of trauma or loss that happened around the holidays, sometimes are more likely to be at risk for holiday blues.
And let's get Ruth in on the conversation, because Ruth, I know that you work with support groups. So talk a little bit about the work that you do to help perhaps someone who may be experiencing holiday blues or even depression.
Well, one of the things we try to do is try to get people to change their patterns, whether they're used to having family around, go ahead and connect with new friends like family. One of the things is attending the support groups so that they can vent those feelings and get support from other people around them. And sometimes just trying new traditions.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get, for people who perhaps may be in denial about even being depressed or having holiday blues, to know that they need to seek help, or having someone to stand in the gap for them, so to speak?
Well, I had a group member that had been coming just as a friend, and he didn't know depression was a mental illness. Mm-hmm. And once I told him that, he said, well, it makes sense to me. Of course, he had just experienced losing someone who was a good friend of him who had committed suicide.
Well, that's tragic.
And that's very common. That's very common.
Go ahead. Sorry.
A lot of people do not recognize, symptoms of depression, and they do not recognize the need for help and attending support groups and things like that. And so it's really important to improve that awareness among people that this could be a significant disorder that affects the quality of life.
Mm-hmm. So much so to the extent that they can't function.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Very much. Absolutely.
Well,
Joyce, you want to add to
education
that?
is key, is essentially what I was going to say. You've got to really have that awareness, and I think that is key to recognize that it doesn't always present in the same way for everyone. Sometimes depression doesn't look like depression to some folk. In various populations, it may look like anger because it's a lot more acceptable to actually demonstrate anger, but underneath that anger, oftentimes there's depression there.
So what's your recommendation then? I mean, if say, for example, if a person is in denial because, or they may not be aware of how it should be diagnosed, what can a family member or loved one do to help that person?
Well, what I would say is really connect with them where they are. One thing that family members can also do is to know themselves what to look for so that they're informed, and then connect with them in a way that's non-judgmental and make sure that they recognize it is not something that is stigmatized, but it's something that is valid, and that they have a right to actually feel that way, and that it needs to be addressed and it can be resolved easily.
And that's something we hear a lot when we're talking about subjects pertaining to mental health, is the stigma that's associated with it. You think we'll ever get to a point where we get past people being afraid to get help because of stigma?
I definitely think we are moving in the right direction. We're doing a lot to raise awareness against this stigma, but it's very prevalent, and it's an uphill battle. Anyone and everyone that can help in this fight would be very appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it's a cultural shift. We have to really recognize what's going on with that it's not something that is a negative, that it's not a weakness, but that it is actually a strength to be able to be honest and be transparent about what they're experiencing. and that if they're able to do that, then they can move towards some resolve.
And also to get help, because
Absolutely.
obviously if you seek help, there are ways that you can cope. So let's talk a little bit about some of those coping mechanisms that are available for families or perhaps for an individual who may be diagnosed with the depression.
You know, some of the main things you can do for coping are the same things that we hear all the time when we're talking about wellness. You know, make sure you're eating a healthy diet, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure that you're doing things that you enjoy. And sometimes in the holiday season, we lose sight of that because we start doing all the obligations of the holiday season. But having those enjoyable and pleasant events in your life is really good for your mood. And so those things are really important. Exercise. All of those are going to help cope with depressed mood.
So what if you have that family member or loved one who pulls away during the holidays and they isolate themselves?
Well, it's key to recognize that to isolate yourself really perpetuates those symptoms, and so it's key to really try and encourage them and bring them in and really fight depression and those symptoms that mimic it. I love what you said about that whole piece of, you know, fighting it and eating healthy and all of that. And all of that, of course, contradicts what we do in the holiday season most often. We do everything but take care of ourselves most often, even really gaining validation from looking out for other people, and then we really don't look out for ourselves. So it's so key to recognize that if you're healthy, then everyone around you is more apt to be healthy as well.
Well, I know you deal specifically with the veterans populations, and we see so much of the circumstances that they face, particularly those who have been in combat situations in particular. What are you able to offer to veterans who may have some challenges in that area?
Understanding the normacy of it, recognizing that they do have resources that are available, and it's really becoming more apparent that they have that, and they're opening up to that. The confidentiality piece is key in them recognizing that whatever they share is going to be held confidential, so they do have an avenue to be able to express themselves and be honest about how they're feeling so that they can start to connect where they are. We have a lot of resources for service members and their families, so it's not really just specific to the service member because the family is impacted largely as well, deploying around times, holidays, things like that, and then even service members when they've lost folk in combat. Remembering those experiences can be difficult. So that honesty and transparency is key to make sure that everyone is open about what has transpired.
So we've come a long way, if you will, in terms of addressing the needs of service members.
We have. We have. Of course, a long way to go, I would say, because like I say, it's a cultural shift. Oftentimes, it's just in some populations looked upon as a weakness to actually admit that I'm hurting, but we all hurt. And if you don't hurt, or if you don't admit that you're hurting, oftentimes you're lying to yourself, and eventually that will manifest in your relationships and otherwise.
Is there a distinction in terms of how men and women process depression, would you say, Ruth, in your experience?
No, because it takes the same baby steps to go ahead and build from being so depressed to learning the steps it takes to get better, like even if it's taking one walk down the sidewalk. If it's something like watching a TV show or a movie you enjoy, and that's going to trigger your symptoms. So for most people around the holidays, I usually say try to make a new tradition for yourself, and that could be just taking care of yourself by saying no.
Well, and sometimes I guess it is a good thing to say no, because you could be on holiday overload, and that really kind of compounds the issue, doesn't it?
Yes.
A lot of this is about expectations that people have about the holiday season, right? You've got to cook a big meal, you've got to invite a lot of friends, and that actually creates a lot more stress than people think it does. So.
Right.
And the financial stress that comes along with the holidays. You know, you think you have to have a gift for every coworker, every friend, every person. And sometimes the best gift you can give them is your time, and say, you know, hey, I'm going to take care of myself right now, and maybe we can get together in the new year and have some time together. That's more important to some people than whatever gift you could purchase.
Or just giving them a hug and saying, I love you.
Well, and I think what happens when you set that boundary, then you reflect it, and oftentimes you empower others to reflect the same thing. That strength really kind of permeates, so it's a good thing.
So let's talk, because we don't want to run out of time before we talk about available resources for the person who is directly impacted, and perhaps for family members or loved ones who need additional support.
Well,
Calling NAMI.
yeah,
I was going to say,
NAMI.
that's your best resource.
absolutely.
Absolutely, but we want to leave people feeling empowered, because I think sometimes there's a sense of hopelessness.
Yes.
But this is an opportunity to say you are not alone, number one, but number two, that there are
Right.
available avenues for help.
And a lot of this goes along with preparing yourself. You know, if you already have a mental health disorder that you know gets worse during the holidays, or you know that you have a pattern of your symptoms getting worse even if you do not have a mental health disorder, it's important to plan ahead of time and look for options. That options could include calling NAMI, getting into support groups, talking with friends or family who are supportive, and if the symptoms are severe enough, maybe even talking to a mental health professional, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a primary care doctor, anyone that can help you with giving you different options, and the options could be just a short-term therapy session, or even medications, and sometimes those are very effective. So.
And I like what you said at the beginning of the program, not trying to self-diagnose, because I think with the advent of technology and many resources online, people have a tendency to try to figure things out for themselves, and it's great for a sense of awareness. But obviously you don't have the level of expertise that many people have gone to school for years to be prepared to help you. But support is important, not just for the individual, but for the family members.
Also. And even though my support group is for basically consumers, I am also trained in the family-to-family support group, and I encourage family members to come so that they can work on their issues.
Okay, now when you say family members work on their issues, talk a little bit, explore that a little bit for us, if you don't mind.
Family members have a feeling that they have to take care of the person with the illness. And they're doing everything they can to take care of that person, but they're forgetting about themselves. And they need to go ahead and work on things that are bothering them, and learning to separate a little bit from the person that has the illness, and let the person with the illness grow at their own speed.
Okay, well, that's certainly some good advice. Now, would you say that support groups are readily available throughout the state for family members who may need some additional help and counseling?
Well,
Fair.
yes. And you
Not
can
100%.
Okay, so what do we need to be doing about that?
We need to get people so that they recognize that mental illness can be treated, and there are places people can go for support, but right now we need the monies to go ahead and be able to train people to do more support groups.
Along those lines, I think it's very important that we when you talk about the culture shift, that we as a community and as a culture start to prioritize mental health, emotional health, holiday blues, whatever you want to call it, that we begin to prioritize that and put the same amount of importance on that as we do for physical health ailments. So that when the funding you're talking about, that we can put it there because we realize that it really is important.
Absolutely.
And we've had those conversations before that, you know, that we need to put the same emphasis on physical well-being or mental health well-being as we do physical well-being.
There's a whole discussion about the Mental Health Parity Act, which is, it's a big culture shift there.
It's huge.
And mental illness and substance abuse aren't given the same level of treatment essentially as general medical illnesses.
Well, and I don't want to miss that opportunity though, Pamela, that NAMI is there. You have outpatient services that are there. You can go to Psychology Today to connect with outpatient providers. There are inpatient providers, and specific to what your needs are, you can make that differential. So there are a number of avenues out there to explore to make sure that your needs are met.
Did you want to add something else to that?
No, I echo that feeling. There are a number of services available, but a lot of times I feel like, my clients or my patients come and tell me that their insurance is a barrier in accessing those services. And so, we have to start addressing, and we've already been addressing those, but we have to do a better job of addressing some of those barriers.
It seems though that the shift the needle is at least moving in the right direction, specifically as it relates to where Arkansas was 20 years ago.
Right.
I agree, absolutely.
And what would you say is I guess probably the single most challenging barrier? Is it the financial piece?
It's a lot of things. It's financial piece is one aspect of that. One other aspect is the stigma revolving around mental illness, and that's still, I think, one of the biggest barriers.
However, there is an organization out there called Semicolon, Inc., and they are working towards breaking the stigma of mental illness.
And all of us doing our part. NAMI does a great job in organizing events that helps people talk openly about their mental illness. And those are the kind of activities in the community that we need to again fight this battle.
And I think it's important to note that it has to be a comprehensive engagement, not a situation that's dealt with in isolation.
Right.
And it takes all of us coming to the table, working together.
That's right.
And so your
Church community.
now, see, you hit on something. You touched on something that's probably very even more of a hurdle or barrier when it comes to the faith community.
Right, but they're coming around.
They are.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, well, and I think what's key is that there has to be a recognition that there are vessels who are in that vein to be able to really be used for that purpose. So it's all about perception and understanding what that really looks like at the end of the day, and that it's not a question of faith, but a question of really having faith and recognizing that in your faith.
I work closely with a pastor on some research about mental health and faith communities. And he often says that as a faith community, we have to see psychologists and psychiatrists and other mental health professionals as gifts from God.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really, ties into what you're saying, a really important piece, that when we see that mental health piece and the professionals as being a vessel that maybe God is using or your faith is using to help you, that can change the barriers that are happening in that community.
That's right.
So as we come to the end of our very insightful discussion, I'd like for one or two of you to leave our audience with some nuggets of wisdom about how we might be better equipped, particularly during the holidays. Let's start with you, Dr. Kumar.
Right, so one of the things to realize is, there are good treatments available, and you're not alone in this fight. So gather everyone that you can that can help you, including friends, family, your pastor, your doctors, and the more people you have, the easier the fight becomes.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate that. And what would you add to that?
I would say during this holiday season, give yourself the gift of self-care and take care of yourself. Learn to say no. Learn to listen to your body, listen to your mind when you need a rest. So give yourself that gift.
Okay, and Joyce, we're just going to go down the line.
Just go down the line.
Yeah.
So I would say honesty. That's always key for me, making sure that you have that awareness of where you are and making sure that you're honest about that so that you don't allow circumstances and those things outside of yourself to define who you are, but you recognize who you are and move in that vein.
And it's okay to get help.
Absolutely.
It's okay to get help. And you will have our parting words, my dear.
You're not alone.
Okay. That's a powerful statement. You're not alone. Well, we appreciate you sharing that with us. And we appreciate all of your insight because, obviously these kinds of programs are not just to create awareness, but they're also a pathway to better mental health for those who are watching. Thank you again, and we hope you have gleaned some useful information that can help you lead healthier lives.
Healing Minds, Changing Attitudes is underwritten by the Arkansas Mental Health Research and Training Institute.